Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, the immensely talented J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, the Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. It is Wednesday, March the 27th,
So it's, cer-
2024, and it is Wednesday night.
it's certainly Black Men Speak. So let's give a shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music, to also to our own studio and Forest Films for our virtual studio. And Tom, for those who are listening and watching, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you're watching tonight, invite a friend so you guys have something interesting to talk about for the rest of the week. With that being said, Tom, let's do what we do best, which is bring the most informative information and news about the Black community to the Black community.
Amen. Let's get this party started right, as we used to say back in the day, Jimmy. We are going to start back, of course, with our celebrity birthdays today. And if you have a birthday at the end of March or the very beginning of April, you may share something in common with the following folks. So for those of you who have a birthday today, you may have a birthday. You have a birthday in common with this immensely talented and beautiful young lady, Miss Halle Bailey. Jimmy, she of course is an actress and also a singer extraordinaire. Played on the recent film, Jimmy. That name is missing me right now, but about the mermaids that
Really?
came out last year. So.
Okay. The Disney
Absolutely.
film.
But yes, the Disney film that came out last year, of course, Jimmy. And so, happy birthday to you, Miss Halle Bailey, on your birthday today, Jimmy. Also,
Do
I
we,
would
do we
be
have a photo of her, Tom?
what's that?
Do we have a photo of the young lady?
Oh yeah. This is her, Miss Halle Bailey, right here.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So, no, immensely talented. Also, a great singer as well. Jimmy, there was a little controversy regarding the film because this role is traditionally played by Caucasian women, and there were some folks who kind of pushed back that it was cast with a sister, Jimmy. But it was a phenomenal film, very entertaining.
Yes. Well, I didn't watch it, but I'll take your word for it, Tom.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, happy birthday today. Next, we have a birthday coming up tomorrow. The daughter of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice King, has a birthday coming up tomorrow on March the 28th. Very talented, also an attorney. So, her early happy birthday wish to you tomorrow, Sister King, as well.
Okay. Happy birthday.
Next, Jimmy, for those of you who are into music and entertainment, I'm pretty sure you're gonna know this face. You might have to get up out your seat and start going back and forth. MC Hammer, Jimmy, has a birthday coming up on March the 30th.
Is that Hammer?
That is Hammer. That is Hammer, man. He doesn't have on his baggy pants, but he does have on his shades, which is one of his signature.
Wow.
He's one of the yes, as one of the signature style icons. Jimmy doesn't have on the baggy pants, but definitely has on the signature shades. Has kind of matured a little bit in his style. And last but not least, we have another actor that has a birthday coming up at the beginning of April. David Oyelowo. You've probably seen this face in a lot of films. Jimmy actually played Dr. Martin Luther King in a film that came out a couple of years ago. Very talented actor, of course, from the African diaspora. And so, happy birthday, or let's call it a early happy birthday to David Oyelowo, and we hope that you, your family, and friends celebrate in style. So definitely enjoy your birthday.
Yes.
So those are birthdays for today, Jimmy, and I'll have to give a shout out because today, Jimmy, is also the what we call the Alphaversary for my history and me being initiated into the Great Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We had 13 of us, Jimmy, and today is what we call our Alpha Line anniversary, often called our Alphaversary. So shout out and happy birthday or happy happy birthday in Alpha to all of my line brothers. Hope you guys are out there kicking it, doing something.
All right, congratulations, T, to you and your
All
line brothers.
All right, let's see who we have on the chat line. We have, of course, our good friend Asar Al-Kabilan, who is listening on the show of the African Genius podcast. Of course, thank you for supporting us. We also have Miss Tanya Hall. Good evening to you as well. Thank you for joining us today. And Miss Bosie Scott, buenas noches from Medellin. So she is in.
Buenas noches.
Yes, buenas noches to Miss Bosie Scott as well. We want to thank everyone for joining in. We're going to, of course, have an interesting show today, as always. So for those of you who have any questions or thoughts on the chat line, feel free to join us because this is, of course, going to be a very interesting show, as always, Jimmy. So let's go ahead and start off with our stories for today, Jimmy. It's been, a few interesting things in the news that we've got to get up to speed with. First, we will start out in the state of Florida, who just passed a bill banning social media for preteens, otherwise young folks under 14. So Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just signed the new bill into law this week, banning children under 14 from using social media. Or
it's not banning them from using it, Tom. You have to get permission to get an account.
That is no, Jimmy. That is 14 to 15-year-olds who need to get permission. He is actually banning them from having accounts if you are under 14. If you are 14 to 15, you actually have to get permission from your parents. But the bill orders social media companies and their platforms to delete accounts for those under the age of 14 years old. Bill HB 3 to protect children from harms of social media dictates that only those over 16 can have unrestricted social media accounts. Teenagers between the ages of 14 and 15 will need parental consent to join websites such as TikTok and Instagram. Santos noted the looming threat of internet predators as one of the reasons why he signed the bill, but social media companies will be liable if children under 14 has an account and could face lawsuits of up to $50,000 per violation and $10,000 in damages. But of course, critics claim this is a violation of First Amendment rights and is constitutional, so it may get some countersuits in the courts, Jimmy. So this is actually an interesting story. This is supposed to be going into effect January the 1st of 2025.
Okay, what's the constitutional challenge here? So kids don't have a right to sign contracts, to get tattoos, to smoke, buy cigarettes or liquor. So, I mean, what's the challenge here? The adults in the room get to decide what's good or bad or what was right or wrong for children. So I'm not sure that this constitutional challenge. All too often, not to deviate from this story, but a case up in New York where basically the school district is saying children have a right to identify how they want and that we need to respect their wishes. But the adults, as adults, we don't have to respect their wishes. Children have to respect the wishes of adults and their parents, not the other way around. So I don't have a problem with this bill. If the people of Florida want to keep their kids safe by keeping them off social media and off these platforms, which, all the studies show that these things do poison the minds of young kids, then, hey, more time to study and hit the books.
Jimmy, in terms of the rationale for it, some of the parents and or groups representing their parents of the ability of the parents to make decisions on behalf of their children as opposed to being told and or dictated to by the government, the state government in this case, in terms of what they allow their children to have access to.
Yeah, this isn't out of hands of parents, Tom.
And so the parents who are pushing back against this, saying that, as a parent, I get what you're saying, but is your right as a parent to be able to provide and or deny access to social media and or other tools for their children?
First of all, Tom, nobody's going to be denied. The parents pay for the cell phones. The parents can set the account up. They can easily verify their age. They have a credit card. They have a driver's license. If you feel so strongly about keeping your kids' mind polluted with this junk from social media, then you set the accounts up for them. You provide the cell phone, you pay for it. So just go the extra step and set the accounts up for them and give it to them and move on in life. There's nobody stopping you from restricting your kids from poisoning their mind. Nobody's taking that right away from you. This is just foolishness.
Well, again, the parents are saying, and that's not to say that takes anything away from your argument, but the parents is saying that I'm the parent, not the state. And the question
Correct. And you own the cell phone, you
and,
pay
and
for
what
it.
they're saying
So you set the cell phone up for what you want them to access and have access to, and then you give it to them, just like you do now. You go to get a cell phone and you give it to them. But before you give it to them, whatever account you want or don't want on there, you set it up for them and then give it to them. Nobody's taking anything away from the parents. These kids will still be on Facebook and TikTok and all these other platforms.
But what if they want their kids to have their own account?
Okay.
Separate from them. I mean, if they want their kid to have their own account, okay, I can set it up for them under my name. But if I want my kid to have their own account in TikTok without it being mine, as a parent, I should have the right, without what they consider to be the state government overreaching them and telling them what they can or cannot do as a parent, is what their argument is.
Well, Tom, like I said, there are a lot of things kids can't do, from tattoos to cigarettes to liquor to voting to contracts. And all those things are restricted. And so society has that right to try to keep kids protected, even when their parents are too stupid to do their parenting. So unfortunately, this is a sad thing that the state has to do, to twist the arms of parents and make them do the right thing. And rather than just go along with the program to keep their kids safe, they want to push back and fight back, because too many parents are trying to be friends with their kids rather than raise them. So, like I said, I don't see anything wrong with adding restrictions to what kids can and cannot do, especially when these things will harm them. It's almost like this whole gender identity. If your child want to identify as a cat or a bird, okay, so what? I mean, there's some mental illness that goes along with that, and rather than go along and play along, you should be trying to get your child treated. But far too many I'm not going to say us, but far too many people are trying to be friends with their kids rather than parenting their kids. So sometimes you really do have to do what's best to keep kids safe, because they haven't lived long enough and they're not wise enough to know what's best for them. So rather than continue to go down this path of letting them jack their lives up, the state of Florida is simply trying to do what it can do to help hopefully save a few kids from predators, from having their minds jacked up with all kinds of strange ideas, because their parents don't have the good sense to keep them safe.
Interesting. And there are a couple of comments on here. Ms. Tanya, it's about time somebody holds parents accountable for the well-being of their children. Ms. Bosie, this is the same as drinking. The government dictates when children can drink. What else do we have on here? Booster seats. And then it is needed in this day and time when children are basically raising themselves. For the most part, social media is their parent. And I won't say that social media is their parent, but I will say that social media has a massive influence on the values and the norms of children. I mean, Jimmy, long gone.
You just said you say you don't agree with the statement, but then you just validate the statement. Wait. Social media has a big influence. Jimmy, that's what parents are supposed to do. Parents are supposed to have the big influence on your morals and your understanding, and that's been replaced by these platforms. So you do agree with it.
Jimmy, you didn't think clearly about what I said and what it was in response to.
Okay.
You said, she said, the most part, social media is their parent. That was what I was disagreeing with.
Right, I know, but then you turned around and said after that, you said you disagree with it, but saying these platforms are having a big influence on their thinking and their morals, but that's what parents are supposed to do, have an influence on your thinking and your morals. So you are, in effect, agreeing with the statement.
There is a difference between me saying, or there's a difference between me disagreeing with social media being the parent and me saying after that, that long gone are the days where which is where I was going, where parents and church and the school were the overwhelming influence. Now it is social media, which is what I said, that has been influencing the values and the norms of students. And so my take is parents are responsible for being the primary influencer of children. Long gone are those days, though, Jimmy. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at how a lot of our young people are carrying themselves, I won't say the majority of them, but when you see how young men are dressing, how they're carrying themselves, when you see how young women are dressing and carrying themselves, you know, there comes an age when they're very young where the parents are the primary influence. Once they get to their teens, their peers and or other influences come into play. But where we would agree, Jimmy, is that parents have to take ownership when children are under their roof for setting those standards and norms. And if that means taking the television away, if that means taking the phone away, or anything else that is going to be in the best interest in their children, that's what I'm talking about. But what I disagreed with is that social media are their parents. Now, what I will acknowledge is that parents have allowed social media to become their parents.
Okay.
That is where I will
take your walk back explanation, Tom.
No, I'm not walking back nothing. You didn't let me finish what I had to say. That was the problem.
It sounded like a walk back to me, but okay.
No, you don't let me finish what I have to say.
If there was one thing I could do to modify this law to make it just a slightly bit better, rather than finding the social media platform company, I'd find the parents. You know, if your children are underage and on these platforms, and we can prove it and we know it, you know, the bill comes to you or an arrest warrant. So that's how you enforce that, rather than trying to make Facebook pay, make the parents pay.
But then where do you hold Facebook and other social media platforms accountable for the type of content that they allow children access to, that's creating the problems that folks are fighting against, and what Florida and their legislators are fighting against?
Well, you know what, Tom? It's the do what the Chinese do. Yeah, all of the junk that TikTok allows our kids to be fed and view, Chinese kids don't get a chance to see that. You know what Chinese kids see on TikTok? They see
exactly what they see.
They see national messages. They see informational stuff. They see encouraging stuff. And then after a certain hour, I think 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., it's cut off. They can't even access it anymore. I don't have a problem when the social media companies hire neurologists and these social scientists to figure out every way to keep people addicted to their platform and keep them coming back with notifications and awards that don't mean anything, coins that you can't spend on anything, all to entice these young kids to keep coming back, and encouraging them to do sillier and sillier stuff in order to get out there and become a whore for views and clicks. So yes, I mean, go after them, shut it. They can cut it all down, except Black Men Speak, because we know this is a very positive platform. But the rest of them, Tom, I don't care if they went away tomorrow. Well, if you're not doing something to contribute to the overall knowledge of people and understanding, then the entertainment, the stuff that's just out there for entertainment, should be limited and viewed with a great deal of skepticism, because we know how addictive social media is, especially on American kids. That's done purposely.
And to your point about what the United States allows young people or just the public in general to be exposed to compared to China, you know, that would work, except for the fact that these multi-billion-dollar countries are in the pockets of our politicians, which allow that content to be on there. And so at the end of the day, you have to follow the money. And so understanding that they are in the pocketbooks of our legislators, they're not going to allow that to happen, because at the end of the day, they're not really concerned about the best interest of the public or the kids. They're concerned with the best interest of their pocketbooks.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of these social media execs don't allow their kids on these platforms. You know, the Google crowds, the Tech Valley in California, all these tech company executives, you know, they don't allow their kids to have tablets and calculators. They they still do things by pen and paper. They teach them old fashioned, but they don't mind these junk products be pushed to everyone else's kids.
Agree.
So
and we point the finger at China when it comes to a lot of things in terms of, some of their policies. But I would agree with you. China doesn't allow their children to be fed this trash, and they don't deal with the consequences of the trash that our kids and the society is dealing with. There are a couple of other comments on here that I want to acknowledge, Ms. Bosey. Baby seats and booster seats are mandatory. Parents should have the sense to use them, but the government has made it law. This is nothing new. Ms. Tanya, high suicide rates and high mental illness among teens is alarmingly high. Yeah, they need somebody to help them censor the stuff these kids are downloading into their minds on a daily basis. Correction, high suicide rates. Absolutely, Jimmy. I mean, what has happened, obviously, is that there is a certain segment of the population that is now dealing with the depression, the suicide rates, and the other negative consequences on social media. When it comes to certain folks, it seems to be a non-issue. But when it comes to other segments of the population, we've now got to draft some laws because it's now hurting their kids. As long as crack cocaine was tearing up black communities, it was not a problem. We criminalized
what's the problem, Tom?
But then all of a sudden,
black people.
Exactly. But all of a sudden, when we have opioids,
mainstream,
and we have other folks who are committing suicide and other folks who are dying, we've got programs, we've got billions of dollars that we're going to commit to trying to fix this problem, but we're not criminalizing the problem. Same thing here, Jimmy. I mean, this is, been coming for a long time. And typically Florida, Texas, and a couple of states typically are the proving ground for this type of legislation, and then it starts spreading. I will say this. I believe that the content on social media that our young people have access to is way over the top. I believe ultimately it is the responsibility of the parent to make sure that their kids don't have access to this, just like they don't have access to pornographic or or quasi-pornographic material on television. Ultimately, the parents are responsible for that. But let's be very clear. Some parents, a lot of parents, ain't doing this because, quite frankly, they're not committing the time to making sure, to your point, Jimmy, that kids don't have access to material that is destructive psychologically and physically as well.
So there's a 1%, Tom, that I have to correct in your statement. So 99% was correct. There are some states that they're okay with this: New York, California, Oregon, Washington. And so you mentioned the states that are run by Republicans, but I can tell you states that are run by Democrats don't have a problem with this.
Again, my statement was, when it comes to legislation, and I'm talking about in the South, because we're in the South, typically states like Texas and Florida, maybe Arkansas, when there are certain types of legislation that comes out, those are the proving grounds. And we're talking about, and what you did not acknowledge,
Republican-run states.
When we talk about limitations on certain things, typically those are the states that you're seeing that. First,
Republican-run states, right. Where common sense.
So there is no 1% correction to make.
No, Tom, there was a 1% correction. So don't try to walk it back now. But
no, I'm not walking it. What I said was correct.
Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Republican-run states. So you are correct. Exactly. And those states have.
What is there to correct about that?
Well, I'm just adding to your statement that you failed to mention that. You said states, but there are some states that are okay with having the inmates run the prison, which is Florida, Oregon, Washington, New York, Illinois.
We're talking.
You didn't say it. I'm saying I'm adding to it.
We're not talking about inmates running the prison, and I don't know what you're referring to.
I'm talking about states that allow kids to be in charge, where the adults don't seem to be they have any kind of good common sense. So California is one of those states. Oregon is one of those states. Washington, New York, Illinois. These are the most craziest states in the union that go for all this nonsense. So you're right. So states like Florida, Texas, Arkansas,
more conservative states,
very conservative states, yes.
And that was my point. So
you made the point without making the point, but okay. So I was just adding to your statement to provide some clarity that it's okay to live in states run by Republicans. It's not so bad after all.
Okay. Okay. It depends on what the issue. It depends on what the policy is. There are a couple of other comments. I think I think Facebook, TikTok, and parents should be fine. So we're saying not just the
That's right.
companies,
Find the parents.
providers, but the parents as well. Good evening to Miss Chastity. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about of course, the Florida law that was just passed banning social media for folks under 14. We got Brother Frederick V. Roberts, Esquire. Hello there, brother. Hello. Good brother Frederick V. Roberts. Oddmod, checking in from Hollywood, Florida. What's going on, brother Orlando? It's been a while since I've seen you. Got a statement from Mr. Roberts. Parents need to be more vigilant and concerned about their children. It's a shame that folks who say they are Christian are not following the Bible's rules that they are to raise their children.
Ask him what does he think about the law itself, the legality or the constitutionality of the law. What does he think? As being a lawyer.
And this is to everybody who is listening, who is on chat. If you're not on chat, get on it. What do you think about the Florida law banning social media accounts for young people under the age of 14? Has to get parental approval for 14 and 15, unrestricted after 16 years. Do you have any specific thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent, with this law that's just been passed in the state of Florida? Matter of fact, Orlando is in Florida, so he may have an opinion about this. It said Florida is passing many aggressive laws except when it comes to gun control, and probably a lot of those guns are going to Haiti, but that's enough.
We gotta stay safe.
A lot of those guns are going to Haiti.
Yes, they are. They're needed.
But I will say this, though, Jimmy. In principle, I think something does need to be done restricting access. When we look at the suicide rates, when we look at a bunch of really psychological and physical issues going on with our children because of access to dysfunctional content on social media, I'm not saying you can't trust parents to do it, but unfortunately, as in my generation, they started the latchkey generation where, kids were in essence being programmed by the television because you didn't have one of the two parents, typically the mother, in the household anymore, and so they weren't monitoring it. So kids had the keys to the house because you didn't have a parent at home. And so they had an hour or a couple of hours at home watching TV. Now that is now transformed into social media, where they have access to programming all day, every day, and sometimes unfettered access.
Tom, this wouldn't be so bad if it was limited to positive information, tutorials on how to do math, calculus, how to write a sentence. If it was educational stuff, content that they were being flooded with. But here's the thing, Tom. When we grew up, generally we'd be allowed to go out and play in the summertime. When the lights came on the light pole, you knew it was time to be inside the house. That was the rule. You just wasn't allowed to be outside when those lights came on. When they started flickering, that's when you knew it was time to start running your butt home.
Correct.
Because you had to be in that door by the time those lights fully kicked in, else you may be met with some trouble. And the trouble, I mean a belt. But today, these kids don't know how to socialize. See, Tom, when we were kids, we had to get out there and play with one another.
True.
You had scraps. You learned to negotiate, to get what you wanted. If you had a beef with someone, you had your little fallouts. But eventually, y'all found ways to make up, forget about it, become friends again. These kids today don't have any social skills. They don't know how to interact with anyone because their face is stuck inside a phone, and the phone becomes their interaction to the connection to the entire world. And so we were talking about suicides earlier. Once again, kids who are allowed to change their gender as teenagers, when they become adults, the suicide rate among those are 4 times higher than the next group of suicide victims. So Tom, this lifestyle, obviously, and the number one surgery in the world is adults trying to reverse the craziness they've done when they were kids with this gender fluidity. So with that being the case, and we're armed with this knowledge, why are these parents still allowing kids to make a decision about what gender they are. You are the gender that God gave you until you become 18, and then you become whatever you want. But here's the thing: is that when they become adults, no one cares. A lot of attention is paid to these kids when they're kids. Some people thinking they're brave and courageous and patting them on the back. They get all this attention, and then when they become adults, no one cares because all the adults are trying to pay their bills, trying to survive and live, and they don't care what dress you wear, who you loving, or what your problems are because they have their own problems. So this becomes a very depressed life for these kids. So don't set your kids up for this craziness. Do your absolute best to parent your kids, teach them right from wrong, and don't allow them to be influenced thinking this is a good thing because those other kids are showing all this attention. So maybe it's not that bad after all. Yes, it's very bad, Tom. This is why we don't let kids make adult decisions. And for these states that allow these kids to do this without parent consent, you can have your child taken away from you if you oppose them. This is how crazy some of these states are, like California. I would not raise a child in that state. It's a beautiful state, but their politics is crazy. Absolute lunatics.
And Jimmy, a lot of those California folks are coming to Texas.
Unfortunately, bringing their bad politics with them.
Bad politics and very, very bad real estate prices.
Yes, they're driving up our prices, making it unreasonable because they have the money. They just write checks without having and don't negotiate. They'll gladly pay $100,000, $200,000 over asking for what they want, and the rest of us can't afford that. So they're pricing us out of the market, Tom.
Good deal. We have Counselor Elisa Patterson on the chat line as well. Hey.
Another counselor. That's what the legal opinion is of the law.
Yeah. So if Counselor Patterson, if you're there, we're talking about the new Florida law that is banning access to preteen young people access to social media accounts. Of course, this is going into law January the 1st of 2025, where anybody under 14 does not have access to those accounts. And again, what this means is that those companies are held accountable for deleting those accounts for children under 14. But Jimmy, young people, this is the most technology savvy group of young people in the history, probably of human history. And the reality of it is they know how to get around everything. So the question is, okay, you're going to say that you're going to fine these companies $50,000. How are you going to enforce it? I mean, really?
By having you put in a credit card or a driver's license where they can do a background check to verify your ID. But once again, Tom, I wouldn't fine the companies. I'd fine the parents. Send a bill to the house for $1,000 because we found out your child has bootlegged a social media account illegally. I think at that point you get someone's attention, especially if you don't pay it and the arrest warrant comes after that. In fact, Tom, you know what? I don't think Florida law goes far enough.
What would you say when you say it doesn't go far enough?
Well, because there was a time that I thought about running for governor, but if I was elected governor, Tom, I would certainly push through legislation to make it illegal for your child to fail in school. Your child doesn't make A, B, average at least a C plus average in school, then citations will start coming to the house and finding you. Your child missed a day at school, doesn't do his homework. I'll give the teachers the ability to write citations.
So what would be the penalty if, based upon those circumstances, what would be the penalty?
The penalty would be money. If your child failed the test, $100 fine, send a citation home. You don't pay it and get pulled over, you get arrested. So we can deal with this parenting issue by getting parents attention and making them do the job. Because you know what? We pay a price for everything else that we're not good at in society. If you're not a good driver, you're going to get tickets. If you don't obey the law and you're not good at obeying the law, eventually it's going to catch up with you. You may find yourself in jail. So that's just consequence of life. If you're not a good parent, and unfortunately, they let anybody be a parent who lay down and have sex.
What do you mean let? I mean, what's the alternative if they have a baby?
That's why I said we let anybody become a parent, Tom. But you know what? If you're not good at parenting, then of course you need to pay. You need to pay, and maybe that will be the motivation for you to become a better parent. So this Florida law is a first step, but they don't go far enough because they need to find the parents. The parents need to be the one paying the bill on this. You're putting all of the onus on the social media companies. But I guarantee you, when that $500 citation comes to your house because your child has an illegal account, yeah, it'll get your attention. You're going to pull that phone back. You may even take the phone back, Tom. You may stop, cut it off, turn it off, and start saying, hey, hit the books, no television, work on doing your homework and studying, and go that route.
Well,
Rather
Jimmy,
than continue to take fines. Because you're right, kids are going to figure out a way to get it. If they have to go, sneak an ID or sneak your ID to set their account up.
The problem with that is this, Jim. There are consequences to everything. And in principle, that could work. But you got two things that you got to deal with. Number one, if they go to jail because they got all these tickets because either number one, their kids are failing in school, or let's say we're dealing with this social media, then you're not going to have parents at home to raise the kids. And you got an even worse problem. And number two, with them being politicians, they're going to be concerned about losing some votes.
You know what, Tom?
Because these politicians don't do it because it's the right thing to do. They do it for votes.
When I was much younger, I don't know if you remember Victor. I can't remember Judge Victor's last name. Good friend of mine back then. We lost contact. But when I was young and had some connections, I was very irresponsible when it came to my car. I would get tickets all the time. I didn't care because I had a judge who would just take care of them and fix them for me. So what did I care? And once I lost that connection and actually, figured out that people actually go to jail for unpaid tickets and had to sit a day and a half in jail, you know what? That was a motivation that I need to maybe start taking care of some of this stuff. So you wouldn't be going very long. They don't keep you in for years over unpaid tickets, but a day or two in the city jail is a good deterrent, as far as I'm concerned, for decent, honest people. It'll get your attention, and you'll start doing what you have to do.
Until enough of them start sitting up in the jail, then it's going to start getting on the news. But, I would say this. There does need to be some accountability. I believe parents need to be held accountable. I mean, I've seen some devastating stories about parents who did not know that their kids were looking at certain types of content, and then they're knocking on the door for their kid to come out to dinner. They go in the door, and something that a parent should never have to see. And this was a 60 Minutes expose, Jimmy. They see that their young daughter was depressed and suicidal. They never knew it per se. They were just asking her what's going on, and a friend of hers. A friend of the young lady who committed suicide, unfortunately, told the parents to do a welfare check on their daughter, who they thought was just in her room studying. And unfortunately, they found their young daughter hanging because she was depressed because of bullying and depression, Jimmy. And that's something that a parent should not have to go through. And it wasn't a set of parents who didn't spend time with their daughter, who didn't eat dinner, but they did not know what was going on in their kid's head. And of course, kids are going to not tell their parents things that they're either embarrassed about or trying to get away with.
Well, Tom, that is true. And that just means that you need to have more honest dialogue with your kids. I don't mean to bring the Bible into this discussion, but fathers, warriors should rejoice over their family. And that rejoicing means spend time with your kids, talk to them. You should be your kid's best friend. You should be their influencer in life. You shouldn't leave that up to other people. But all too often, Tom, as you know, we have too many homes that are run by women where fathers are absent. There's no male in the house. There's no leadership. There's no authority. And all too often, the internet, social media, other people, I'm not even going to say friends. I mean, just kids are vying for the attention of other people. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's not healthy. Young girls and actually some young boys too, are coaxed into meeting up with adults and bad things happen to them and they come up missing, all because they're searching some kind of attention from an adult. So rather than allow your kids to go through that, you need to be that influencer, that the hero in their life. They need to understand that you go to work every day to take care of them and what that's about, how to earn a decent living and be responsible. That the hero in their lives is not the people that you see on TV and celebrities. P. Diddy is one of them, for example. The heroes in your life are your mother and father.
We got that story coming up next, so we need to save a little time for that.
Okay, so the not the celebrities, that you worship and idolize, but the parents who go to work and do an honest day's work. They work hard to take care of you. Those are the true heroes of life who play by the rules, pay their taxes. They contribute to society and follow the rules. And you should encourage your kids to be just like you and do the same thing. And yeah, but ultimately, our kids are being raised by one of the commenters that said, social media becomes your parent because they're being raised by social media, by people that you don't even know. It's bad enough that they have to go sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day, and you don't even know the name of the teachers. You don't have them on speed dial. You don't know what's going on at school. And these people are with your child more than you, and you don't have a clue as to who they are or what their background is. But then on top of that, to open your kids up to social media and to people out there that you don't know, you haven't vetted, you know nothing about. At least with the teachers, maybe you put your trust in the school if they vetted them. But every parent should be going to PTA meetings, should be going to the school, should get to know your child's teacher because they spend more time with your children than you do. And then to allow your children to be exposed to the internet with no supervision, it's an embarrassment that the state of Florida had to pass such a law.
This is true. There are a couple of comments I want to address. Ms. Tanya, Latchkey Kids generation, and in America, there was still a strong line of morality and standards. So if your kids wasn't home by themselves, they were watching TV, they were watching The Cosby Show and Sanford and Son, as opposed to some of the stuff that you see today. Another one from Brother Orlando. I don't think we can control the internet at this point. AI is only going to blow the virtual world into the stratosphere. And to your point, Jimmy, I think that, and we've talked about parenting, we've talked about family on our past shows, and there has to be a balance, and it is a serious rub because in America, not everybody, let's say there is a segment of the population that is focused on keeping up with the Joneses, trying to look better than everybody else, trying to dress like everybody else. And the reason that becomes a problem is because kids, more than MONEY, which it does cost to raise kids, they need TIME. And when you don't have TIME with your kids, you get consequences and repercussions, unfortunately, that we are dealing with. And, now we're in an age where folks are struggling. You have to have two parents who are working in some cases, or the alternative, make the sacrifice, live a more moderate and conservative lifestyle in terms of what you need so that you can spend that time with your children so that these issues, not that they will not come up, but you will know your kid a lot better alternatively to being at work all day, all evening, not spending time with your kids. So sometimes you're going to have to give up that MONEY in order to give your kids that TIME, because when you look at the alternative, you got to make an intelligent decision.
Tom couldn't say it any better, man. What's our next story?
All right. Next story, Jimmy. You mentioned P. Diddy a little bit earlier. And so I'm pretty sure unless you have been very much asleep over the last several months, you probably have seen this. But Diddy, Puff Daddy, I don't know how many names he's got now, had two of his homes in Los Angeles and in Florida. I think it's Miami.
Yes.
Searched by the Federal Homeland Security investigations agents and other law enforcement as a part of an ongoing trafficking investigation. Obviously, if you've been checking out the news, you know that there are several lawsuits that have been filed against Combs. In February, a music producer filed a lawsuit alleging Combs coerced him to solicit prostitutes and pressured him. Exactly. Yes. Combs' former protege and girlfriend, R&B singer Cassie, sued him in November. Multiple lawsuits against him. He, of course, for those who've been around in the music world, he is the founder of Bad Boy Records, a 3-time Grammy winner who's worked with the likes of Notorious B.I.G., God rest his soul, Mary J. Blige, Usher, and others, in addition to creating a clothing fashion line. I believe it was called Sean John. Jimmy, I forgot the name of the fashion line. And he even launched a TV channel. But, Jimmy, I don't know. When you look at what's been going on over the last at least five or so years, this is just getting in a line behind some of the folks of the likes of Harvey Weinstein,
yes.
Annie Masterson, of course, R. Kelly, which we've covered before. They're all doing some prison time because of things that they have been doing, and now there is a reckoning.
Tom, after some of the people that you mentioned, especially Harvey, You would think that folks who engage in this kind of activity would slow it down, will pump the brakes, say, hey, Puffy, I can't accept the invitation. I can't come hang out with you anymore. But it doesn't seem to stop them. You have the lakes of, I mean, we talked about this on the show a couple of months ago, when TD Jakes, his surfers, that he was hanging out at some of these twerk
And
parties.
he's connected with Diddy. He's connected with Diddy on some of this stuff.
And it's not just him. A lot of high-ranking politicians, people in law enforcement, people in Hollywood, heavyweight people continue to go and involve themselves in these kind of activities. And I think I saw an interview before it came on the show started, where someone who was, I think, the head security for Puffy, was saying that he has cameras in each one of his bedrooms, just like Harvey did. So, when he's setting these parties up, he's videotaping all these people. And he said these tapes are used to bribe people to make sure they do what was needed and was done. He also talked about the number of people that I guess P. Diddy has shot. Gun violence when no charges were ever filed because they pay off local law enforcement and invite DAs to come to these parties. So it's going to be a mess, Tom. I think, I'm not sure why Homeland Security decided to raid his houses, because I'm pretty sure they know a lot of very high, powerful people are going to get wrapped up in this. Like with Harvey, all the names that was on the Harvey Island visits hadn't been released, for a reason, because a lot of those people are very powerful and high up. So, who did P. Diddy piss off? Get rolled up is the question.
Exactly, because that is what this comes right down to, Jimmy. And at the end of the day, justice is blind to those who have privilege and who have wealth. And so the reality of it is he has plenty, he has wealth. He is
For the rest of it, she has 20/20 vision.
Yeah, so he is he is going to get the benefit of the doubt because of the type of representation that he can afford. But if things go down the wrong way, Jimmy, and he ends up doing some time, some folks gonna start getting real nervous. And what happens to folks who've got folks in their private black books? Things can happen.
And Tom, here's the thing that really I just totally don't understand the narcissistic behavior of these people. Just like with the Cosby Show, Bill Cosby.
Yes, Bill Cosby, right?
Okay, costs you millions of dollars, to the in legal fees and settlements to deal with this stuff. And if you're the kind of person who enjoy having sex with women while they sleep and knocking them out with drugs and stuff, there are plenty of women that you can pay that will take whatever you want, fall asleep, and let you have sex with them, if that's what you want. You don't have to take women who are not professionals at this and drug them. And then in the end, when you get caught, it costs you millions of dollars to deal with this. Time in jail, your reputation ruined. And for what? For something you could have gotten with a few $1,000s to pay the right person? And so, these people just think they can get away with anything. They've gotten away with it for so long, and then when it catches up with them, they're some of the first ones to cry racism and say the system is after them. But Tom, these people do some really nefarious, unscrupulous things, and they should never even be allowed to be considered as role models. Kids should not be looking up to this because it's just wrong on every level. And all the people from Puffy on down who participate in this, go to those parties, should all be punished. They should all be ostracized from society. We should no longer look up to them, buy their products, or accept them as doing anything good or have anything good to say.
Interesting couple of comments here from Councilor Patterson, who said, they think they are untouchable. And I think she was referring to folks, once they've achieved a certain amount of wealth and power, they think that they are beyond the law. And to a certain degree, I would have to agree with her.
They are. Yeah, they're going to get away with it.
And folks, this is from Orlando out of Florida. Folks seem to be bored with all the wealth and power. And so that's only, that leaves them to do and buy is immorality and doing some unscrupulous things because they get bored because I guess they have everything. And so they figured, what is it that I can get away with next?
But Tom, here's the thing, though, is that there are plenty of people that you can pay to have your way with. So
True.
pay them. So
True.
these stories about women saying they wake up and their bodies are sore in certain parts, their underwear are missing, and they suspect that maybe they've been raped, but not don't know for certain. You don't have to do that when you have that kind of wealth. Just pay people to play along, role play. If you want to role play like that, if you're into that kind of kinkiness, okay, then find people who you can pay to do this and have your fun. Don't involve innocent people who get wrapped up in your game and victimized. Is my point. So if you're a consenting adult, okay, fine. But for people who are not aware, who just go to these things and think it's cool, and then end up being drugged and wake up the next day and don't know what happened to them while they were knocked out, that's bad, really bad.
Yeah, Jimmy, and I think some of that is going to be indexed to how much power you have, how much bad information that you have to make things go away when it comes to mass media. Because I mean, you have the courts, and then you have the court of public opinion, and there are some folks, who have the money and the power to make stories go away. But part of that is indexed to, number one, how much money you got, and number two, your social class and caste. And sometimes, if the dominoes start rolling, you just can't get away with it. I mean, think about how powerful Harvey Weinstein was.
Oh, he can make or break you in Hollywood.
Exactly. Literally. So it took a heck of a lot. But that's a part of what's going on with the Me Too movement. It took a lot of folks saying, you know what? He did this to me. He did that to me. And it ended up taking him down.
Well, Tommy, the thing is that everyone in Hollywood knew this was going on.
Yep.
They knew about the casting couch. People were at the Academy Awards making jokes about it, that I was able to get this part without having to go through Harvey. People knew and talked about it, and no one did anything. But that's how corrupt the entire industry is. And it's sad that someone that could have been a positive force ended up falling into the trenches right along with the rest of the cesspool for Diddy to get involved in this kind of stuff, because now the stories are going to slowly leak out about his casting couch, about folks like Usher and Justin Bieber and others that had to come live in his mansion when they were teenage boys in order to get promoted and for him to endorse. And what's going on when a grown man is hanging out with teenage boys?
This is a not so secret that everybody knows about, even people who are not in the business.
What do you say about the parents who let their kids go to his house? It's the same thing. And I'm a big Michael Jackson fan, but the same thing. I wouldn't let my kids go spend the night in Michael Jackson's house. I don't care how much I like his music. Not just him. It'd be any adult. There are no other kids there, for you to play with. He doesn't have any children of his own for you to go have a night with. There's no mother around, and y'all in the bed together. All this kind of craziness going on. Hell to the no. I don't care how many doors he can open for you.
That is unfortunately,
kids. Parents are pimping their kids.
What some people will allow to happen just for a semblance of fame and recognition, or even yet, some of these folks may be set up because in certain cases, what they'll do is they'll allow their kids or whomever else to be around these folks just so they can figure out the opportunity to take them to court and get some money out of it. But
I can't think. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
But at the end of the day, as an artist, as an entertainer, as someone who has something to lose, you have to protect that. And I think that you are at risk when you think you are too big and too powerful to not be taken down. You've got to be very careful.
I agree.
Because again, this is common knowledge. It's in the open. Diddy is, the top of the food chain, at least, from his point of view, or from our community's point of view. There are a few folks. You got Diddy, you've got Jay-Z, you've got a couple of folks, obviously who are in the movie, the motion picture film industry, but there are very few in our community that reach that level of power and in fame and influence. R. Kelly, I'm pretty sure he never thought he was going to do any real time.
Well, Tommy, and then here's the other thing. Let me ask you this. What do you think is the reaction going to be once some of the details come out? You know, he paid his girlfriend off $30 million hush money
Yep.
to quiet that lawsuit. He didn't want to be deposed with lawyers asking all kind of questions and having those records become public. The second one, I'm not sure what that was, how much it cost. And then this other man who's a producer for him, you know, is filing a lawsuit against him, saying the same thing. He was, you know, sexually abused by. So I guess P. Diddy is an equal opportunist when it comes to sexual assault. But my question is, how Black people are going to react to this? You know, I mean, it used to be that we used to be a very moral group of people. We didn't put up with a lot of nonsense. We expected people to play by the rules. We had some social norms that we stuck to them. We were very strict about them. We were probably the most conservative group in America. And it just seemed like we've lost our way, that we tolerate this kind of nonsense now and make excuses for it. And I mean, we should all, like, for instance, I mean, I think R. Kelly's a talented guy, but I don't buy any of his music. I don't support him anyway because I don't agree with, you know, with his lifestyle choices. You know, especially with him dealing with a bunch of young girls who are underage. You know, you can't wait till they become of age to deal with them. And, you know, and certainly some of the things we had to hear about that were being done behind closed doors that are not even imaginable. Tommy, you know, you couldn't imagine people actually doing crazy stuff like this. But I guess one of the somebody in the chat line probably put it right. They probably get bored with the lifestyle. You know, but find something productive to do with your wealth, time, and influence, as opposed to what you're doing, you know, abusing young people. And a lot of times they're children, they're teenagers, Tom, and they're just enamored with celebrity, paying them some attention, and will go along with anything. And the parents are letting this happen. And it's just a train wreck of lives that they leave in the wake behind them, and they don't care. But the rest of us should care and ostracize these people. Don't support them. Don't endorse them. Don't look up to them. And we should turn when they come looking for support. Tom, we should just turn our back on them. You know, just let them know you're not part of the family anymore for what you've done. And I hate to judge before the fact, but I'm afraid that the facts you may have the legal representation to beat the charges legally, but morally, socially, you're guilty in my eyes for what you've done. And there's no law that's going to change my mind about him and all the rest of that cesspool of characters for what they're doing.
Jimmy, to answer your question, I think there are two layers that you look to this. And, you know, unfortunately, in our community, we have so few people within the Black community that have, you know, some reasonable semblance of power and fame, that we are among the most forgiving group of people the history of the earth. And so even though, you know, obviously there are some things that Diddy did that he needs to be held accountable for, I know that as a community, we are going to be very forgiving, even though he has done some wrong stuff. From, you know, you look at it from that layer, and that's because we are very protective, even sometimes when our own do wrong. We don't have power. We don't have power over them at that point when they've reached that level of fame, and that's what we have to understand. Number one. Number two, and in terms of what the response is, I guess it really depends on, you know, what is your benchmark? Is it money and fame, or is it the law of what's in your good book in terms of values? And that is what's going to determine, you know, what that response is, because, you know, those folks who are trying to hold on to power and fame, it's at whatever the cost. But those folks who are holding on to values of the good book, there is your answer right there.
So what do people say on the chat line, Tom? Because I can't see the comments.
You know, we got, let me see.
Forgive or not forgive is the question.
What's that now?
Forgive or not forgive is the question.
Okay, so that's the question on the chat line. We're asking everybody, are we talking about Diddy in particular?
Yes.
Okay, so will Diddy be forgiven or not? And we're not talking about mainstream America. We're talking about the Black community. Will Diddy be forgiven or not by the Black community? What are your thoughts on the chat line? And Jimmy, we are just about out of time, so we'll see if we can get a few responses here before we close tonight's show.
Okay.
Not forgive. Okay, Councilor Patterson says the Black community will not forgive. You know that. We'll see
That's
about
a lawyer.
that. Let me be very true. there was a bunch of sisters out there who were trying to forgive R. Kelly, even after the crazy stuff that he did. There were a lot of sisters out there. When I love me some R. Kelly, he's such a great artist.
He is a great artist.
I know it, but that was their justification, in terms of
That doesn't
forgiving.
justify what he's done.
Otherwise, they go to the good book and says, everybody makes a mistake. He made a bunch of mistakes.
Those people that were willing to forgive R. Kelly, if it was your child in the video being urinated on and doing all kind of crazy sex act underage, would you be so forgiving?
Yeah, and I guess the question is, they'll be forgiving. Are they going to forgive him before or after he does the time? He already has supporters saying the raid was wrong. We're talking about Diddy at this point, who is saying that the raid was wrong on Diddy. Of course, I mean anybody that he's had. Hey, what they say, snitches get stitches, or don't bite the hand that feeds you. He has made a lot of careers. He has made a lot of careers and a lot of money for a lot of people.
But if this goes to trial, Tom, all the ugliness is going to come out.
Yes.
Just like with R. Kelly. I mean, there were bits and pieces that were leaking out before, but during the trials, I think he had 2 of them before he was finally convicted. But all the ugliness is going to come out at trial. All the investigation, the deposition, the statements, people testifying. So this will be probably worse than OJ.
Yeah,
if it goes to trial,
I would have to agree with you on that one. If he's pissed off the wrong people, somebody has it for him, they're going to completely destroy his reputation and his legacy. I don't know that they can destroy all of his wealth, but the reputation and legacy, yeah.
And there's all these rumors out there that he put up the $1 million bounty to get Tupac taken out. So, I mean, like I said, all of the ugliness and the dirtiness are going to come out eventually. This is why when you're doing dirt, you need to just do it, keep it secret, don't involve a bunch of people. But somehow we like to showcase our dirtiness to the world to show them what we're doing. So.
But let's also be very clear, Jimmy. When we point the finger at Diddy, there are very powerful, unseen forces that we will leave nameless that have a lot of tentacles in these folks. Even the people that we think are powerful, there are unseen, invisible, very powerful forces that even manipulate some of these very powerful people, the folks that we never know about, whose names we will never know.
Well, that is true, Tom. So I think he must have pissed off somebody.
Yes.
To call this in, because it's not like it's been a big secret that he's been doing this for years and getting away with it. So and protected while he was doing it.
Exactly. But then when you do something against those forces, then they let the hounds out after you.
Well, Tom, they have to let you know that they can still bring you down no matter how much money you have.
Exactly.
So you may have a little money, but they have the power. They own the police force, and if they turn the legal system against you, it's hell. I mean, doesn't care how much money you have and how many lawyers you can afford. They can end up bankrupting you in legal fees.
True.
So,
all right, Jimmy. Well, it looks like we got at least one response that he will not be forgiven. We will continue to track this story as new developments occur. And for tonight, that is it, Jimmy. We are out of time. We've got one more statement here from Orlando. As you stated, we have so few Black people who achieve this status that for protective reasons, Black folks will forgive Diddy. Okay, so we got one on the other side. We'll forgive Diddy just to say, hey, did OJ, MJ, and Cosby as well.
Okay, let's not hide behind the skirt of some people will forgive. We're asking if you will forgive.
Okay. Well, then I misunderstood. I didn't know specifically.
Well, I did say Black people, but really, I thought people would answer the more personal to say, "Well, I'm not going to forgive."
Okay, I thought it was the community as a whole. I apologize.
Well, I did phrase it that way, so yeah. They're right. But I was hoping that people would take a more personal stance to see how they would vote up or down also. So,
well, Jimmy, I can't speak for everybody else, but unless we can count the number of schools that Diddy has opened and graduated a bunch of kids, I don't know that I'm gonna really, care.
I'm not supporting his record company, his music, or his artists.
And so I've never really, even before all this stuff, I've never really. Some of his artists, yes, him in particular, nah. So, all that being said, hey, great show. Thank
Great
everybody
show.
for joining
Thanks
in.
everyone for coming out. See you next week. Tom, do we have any a preview for next week? What the show's going to be about?
You know what? There's going to be some things that we didn't cover this week that we'll cover next week, and so we'll keep that hat in the bag until folks come back next week. And mind you, when we come to April, we're going to have some special guests that we already have lined up. We got our real estate gurus who are going to be back next month, and then we've got our good friend and brother Asar, who is going to do a continuation of our show last year on Pan-Africanism as well, coming up in April. So, folks, April is going to be on and popping.
All right,
folks. Good evening.
Give your last word, Tom.
All right, folks. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Share this content to those who you think would benefit from it, and then bring them back next week. Good night, everyone.